Hi good people, my name's Titus and today we're going to be looking at the Foliage tool inside Unreal Engine. Foliage mode is a collection of tools that enable you to quickly paint or flood fill your environments with static meshes. Let's not waste any time and just jump right into it. Alright, so I have the third person starter template here. To access the Foliage mode, you just simply select the selection mode in the top left corner and then choose Foliage. Alternatively, you can just hold Shift and press 3 and it'll jump you into the mode automatically. Now Foliage basically works with static meshes, so we kind of have to add some static meshes to our palette. So I'm going to open up my content drawer and I have 3 different assets. I have some grass, some rocks, and some trees. We'll start with grass. I'm going to pick a grass asset and just drag it into my palette. It does have to save a foliage asset, so you can just give it a name, hit save, and then we currently have one static mesh in our paint tool right now. So we have a brush size, brush density, and erase density as well. If you notice, the little spherical or half sphere is basically where it's going to be painting. So if I click around, you can kind of see it's painting there. If I hold shift and then I click around, I can actually erase. So I kind of do like the opposite of the brush. If I increase the brush size, it basically makes the area bigger. And then same thing, I can hold shift and just get rid of all that. And that's kind of like the basics on how the paint mode works inside the foliage mode. Now, there are also specific static mesh settings. So if you select the static mesh, you'll get some options like density on a per static mesh basis, as well as radius, your scale, your Z offset, your normal options, as well as your random rotations, which can be pretty handy. So as an example, if I maybe play with the scale, I'll go from a 1 to a 3 on the max, and then I paint around. You can see it gives us a kind of much more realistic grass setting. If I undo this and we scroll up, I can also increase the density. So then when I click around, it'll be basically fuller. The other way you can adjust the density, if I lower this to 0.5, and we click here, you can see that. You can come down to the static mesh and adjust the density levels here, so maybe like something 10%. And that comes in more handy when you basically combine multiple static meshes inside your paintbrush, so you can paint different things. But let's go ahead and set that density back up to 100. And let's look at some of the other tools here. So we have the fill tool. This will use the settings that you specify in the paint tool. So right now, let's leave the density at half for now. We'll select fill tool, and then you just right click anywhere in your world, and then it'll basically apply those paint settings to the area of your map that you click on. And just to show you that, let me undo that, and we'll go back to paint. Let's bump up the density to 1. We'll go back to fill, we'll right click, and then you can see there's more grass there. And then just as an example, I can even lower it, 0.1, go back to fill, right click, and you see there's less grass. So pretty straightforward on that. The other tool that comes in handy is going to be the lasso tool. So let's bump our density to 1. And then let's flood fill so we have some grass, and then I'm going to choose the lasso tool. Basically what it does is it brings in your little brush selector, and you can just click around in the map and then just kind of shift select different areas. And then if you need to make any edits or changes or repositioning, you can do that kind of on the fly using that. Another tool that's pretty handy is the reapply tool. So what we can do is we can select reapply, and then you select your static mesh, and then you can make your adjustments. So like as an example, let's do the scale, and then I'll increase the scale by like 5 and 10. And then basically anywhere I click on the brush, it'll find this particular asset that we have selected in our palette, and it'll only make those changes to that area. So, if you need to make, if your grass is too tall or something, you need to change it on the fly. You can do that very quickly there, but let's go ahead and undo that. The single tool in the options for foliage mode is, you know, pretty self-explanatory. You basically can just add one patch of grass wherever you need it, or one static mesh, kind of like whatever you're using. And then a lot of the other tools are kind of like self-explanatory. You have the erase tool. I particularly just like using the shift option, so I don't really find myself using that one too much. I just use whatever tool I'm in and just hold shift, and it kind of works just as good. And then you have the move tool or move tool, and then your select options, so there's not too much there. But let's go ahead and go back to paint mode. We have our density up. We will quickly flood fill, which I forgot the scale needs to be reset. I will do a 1:3 scale, and then I'm going to shift select that one, and we'll right click, and that looks pretty good there. So now let's actually add in some flowers. So I have some static meshes for flowers. I'm just going to select 3 of them, drag them into my foliage type. I'll have to save my foliage asset for each flower. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck the grass, so only the flowers are checked. So that's the only thing that's going to be painting now. And then I'll go into paint mode. I'll leave my density at maybe 0.5 starting off. And then what we can do is adjust the asset to use a smaller density per flower. So currently the first flower is at 100. Let's maybe just use 10. The yellow flowers we'll leave at 100, and the red flowers we'll leave at 50. So we should have more yellow flowers the more we paint. And then let's also play with the scale. We'll do 1 to maybe 2. And then I'll set the 1 to 2 for this as well. So they're kind of random throughout the area. So now I can just click around and then just create, you know, different flowers. And then you can see there's more yellow ones than there are red. And then I think the white ones are the ones that don't show up the least, I should say. So that's how you can basically paint multiple areas. And you could do kind of like all your static meshes at once. Like you can do all your grass and your flowers, and let's actually do rocks just to demonstrate it. Let's maybe add these 3 rocks, save each of the foliage assets, and then because of the way I did it, I will disable the flowers and just leave the rocks. And then for my paint density, I'm going to use something really low, like 0.5. And then you can just kind of click around. And then you're basically adding some rocks in the scene as well, which is pretty handy. Also, it should be another thing to call out is the number next to the static mesh is how many of the static mesh is spawned in your scene. So currently I have over 1,000 static meshes that are of just the grass. So that's a way you can keep count if your counts are too high. But let's go ahead and maybe do some trees. I'm going to select this tree, save my foliage asset, and then we will uncheck the rocks, so we're only dealing with the trees. And then I'm going to set my paint density to maybe 0.2, and then I'll lower the per tree density to like 20 because I don't want too many of them. And then I'll set my brush size to default. And let's quickly just add in some trees here so we can see what they look like. Yeah, it's not too bad. Okay, let's go ahead and increase the brush. Or maybe double the size, and how does that look? Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. Okay, so now we have a tree brush. What's fun to do with trees is if we scroll down, you can of course adjust the scale, but what I find is more useful is the Z offset. So currently it's set to 0 for the min and the max. The max should stay at 0 because you don't want your trees floating above ground. That makes sense, right? But for the minimum, you might want to do like -400 Unreal units. And if you click around your map, that's a very quick and easy way where you can actually create variances in height, even if you only have like one static mesh. And then this looks very kind of like organic and neat. The other thing too is if you have the random yaw checked, it will give you a random rotation in your static mesh as you spawn around, which also helps. And then if you combine these tricks, you can also add in, of course, the scale as well. So like maybe I do a 0.6 to a 2, and then I just click around. And then you have some small trees, you have some big trees, and then you're placing them at varying heights in the ground. So you can create some interesting effects just with that. Now, one problem that we have with this is when we're spawning these, the default is with no collision. So you can see I'm just going kind of like right through my trees here. If we undo the trees, you can, of course, affect the collision presets before you paint. Currently I'm set to no collision, so if I set this to block all, and then I paint around, then I got my trees added, and now when I play, they'll have like a static mesh collision component to it, where it actually blocks my player from being able to walk through them, so that can be pretty handy. Another thing that may help you is the align to normals option. So if we scroll up here, there is a align to normals. Basically, if I lower my brush size, see if I can demonstrate this. You see how that tree kind of comes out at an angle? And that's because that ramp is angled. So if you don't like that for whatever reason, you just uncheck it. And then we click there. No matter the angle of the ground, you're going to get a vertical facing tree, which I think is more natural. I think trees I mean, some of them will come out depending, but most of the time they kind of grow vertically straight up, even if they're at like a slope. They tend towards the sun, I guess. So yeah, depending on, I guess, the style you're going for, you may want to adjust that, which can be done there. You can also do average normals, which will kind of do like a happy medium between them. So you can see that actually looks pretty good too, honestly. And then the other thing I would like to call out is the, might have already covered it, but the reapply brush. If you select the reapply brush, you can select an asset, like currently we have the tree selected, and you can make adjustments, like say I do the scaling, and then I flip this to like 0.1 to 0.5, and then I can go around and then just kind of click anywhere, and wherever there is that asset, so you can see it's not affecting my grass, it's only affecting my trees. So if you need to make like on the fly changes to certain things, you know, that's kind of like a quick and easy way to do that. But all right, everyone, I think we'll cut the video here, but I hope you found some informative value that you can take into your own projects. But as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.